Alrighty, yo guys, what is up? It's Trevor, and this is the first episode of the track Teardown series that I hope to do in the future. I'm gonna be trying to do them quite often, especially because I've released a lot of tracks under Maddox since this track, Late Night. So yeah, I hope to continue to do them and just get better with them over time, and I hope that it'll be something enjoyable for everybody. Yeah, so we're going to start with this track because this is the first track that I released under Maddox, and we're just going to jump right into it. So what I'll do is I'll just play the song through, and I'll let it play through. I might solo different groups or different things so that you guys can hear some settings and plugins and effects and all that stuff individually, and then I'll kind of go back in detail with some other specific stuff that I want to go over. I won't be able to go down every track just because I think it'll take too much time, but I'll try to just skip over the stuff that doesn't really matter and just the interesting things that I did. I'm not going to go over the stereo out just because the way that I process the stereo out channel has just been constantly changing, and I am still learning on how to, get my mix downs to sound the way I want them to and all that. And this video is for more of a demonstration or informational type thing rather than like a lesson on how to use Logic Pro and how to like produce music and mix and stuff like that, just because I'm still learning too. So this is more of just the interesting things and maybe hopefully unique ways that I make my music. So let's start with it. So that's pretty much it. And let's get into it. So first off, this song is up at the top, if you notice the project name, Weird Chord Song. It's exactly what it is. I started this progression a few years ago on acoustic guitar, and it was just these weird chords, these weird jazzy voicings and all that were just kind of strange. But I really liked the progression, and I just had nothing that I could do with it. And really all the song was, it was a 4/4 version of this. And so I had nothing that I could really do with it. So this song is kind of during the time when I started getting into the like lo-fi hip hop, like jazz hop, chill radio, like the chill hop and the chilled cow radio. And I really liked some of that stuff, and I was really getting into it. And so I didn't want to just be another one of those producers like that where I just sampled some, thing and repeated it over and over again the entire song, and it just does that the whole time. And that's cool, and I enjoy that. It's just not my style. And so I wanted to kind of do my own take on like a lo-fi track. And so that's why you've got the heavy like sidechain compression. Everything is sidechained to the kick, and it's got like a slow release so that it has that lo-fi feel. Of course, you have the vinyl crackle and the white noise and just all that like lo-fi kind of sound, I guess. And so from there, I just like wanted to turn this instrumental acoustic fingerstyle piece into a type of jazzy track. So it's also in 6/8 time, and I think it's a little bit more involved than your normal lo-fi track, and it might not even be considered that at this point, but it was just kind of my take on it. So I took that progression, and instead of playing it like I did in the very last clip, I actually took the Tascam recorder, which I'm actually using right now for my voice. It's a great like portable recorder that I love how it sounds. Took that, recorded it, and every chord I would just, like you heard, I would just play one string at a time and strum it in like a pattern that just kind of went with the rhythm. And from there, I would just like play it one at a time, and then I would let it ring out until it was nothing. And then I'd go to the next chord and so on. That way, when I could go in on here, what I did was I just chopped it accordingly so that it would still be in time. The interesting thing is, I would normally, for something like this, I would grab my fade tool and I would fade in between these so that you wouldn't get a popping or a crack every time like the transitions happen. But since there's already all that other ambience going on, like the rain and everything in the background, I figured that it might add to the feel. So I just actually left it as is. And I think that there's actually a part where I had some cell phone interference because my phone was sitting right next to the mic, and I got a message or something like that. Yeah, right there. You can hear it a little bit coming out of the right speaker. So, elements like that, normally I would like re-record and I would spend a little bit more time touching it up, but for this, I just felt like it really wasn't needed, and if anything, it might even add to the feel of it. So, from there, I've got some heavy effects as far as just this long list of plugins. They're really not doing too much though. I tried to show you guys, so I've got this flanger on here, and this tremolo, and that's supposed to kind of give it a rotor cabinet feel. But the flanger also acts as a like stereo widener, because the way I have it configured here is this configuration I came up with for stereo. And what it does is it slightly alters the left and the right so that it kind of brings them more separated, and it changes them more. You can even take a mono signal entirely and put this on it, and it will turn it into stereo. It's not my favorite way to do this anymore, because you get phasing and you get a lot of unbalance. And so what I normally will do if I'm doing something like this is I'll put the flanger on, and then I'll put a really heavy compressor on it so that it doesn't sound as off balance, unless you really don't care about that. It just kind of depends on what you're doing, but I do like the effect that it gives though. So, like I said, Now I might just use like a sample delay or something like that instead of the flanger, but I still use it sometimes. It just depends. So I did that, and then I actually have it being sent to a separate bus for the rotor cabinet, and it's just another rotor cabinet plugin actually, and it just gives it more of that like phasey flangey kind of feel, I guess. And it's really layered kind of in the background, but it does give it that kind of mid-range effect, kind of if you were listening to it through like a low-quality speaker or something like that, along with like just the rotor cabinet effect anyways. And then that's pretty much it for the guitar, I think. Obviously, it gets a little bit louder during the drop. And then I've just got this final track here that I really don't even think there's anything. Yeah, there's not even a lot on there. I took the flanger and the spreader off. It just has a little bit of reverb and EQ and compression and stuff. So from there, let's go up. So I've got the piano and the little bit of these like choir swells. And those just kind of add to the weird like ambience, I guess, to the entire thing, where it kind of has this like eerie feel to it. So I've got the upright bass and the sub bass actually layered, and I EQ'd out all of the sub bass frequencies from the upright so that I could add in like this digital sine wave, really clean bass, and make it really heavy. And that's, I mean, my roots, I just love bass. I'm a huge bass head, and so, you know, in all my tracks I really try to have like some sort of sub bass that you put it through a subwoofer and it's gonna be crazy, and I really like that. So I also obviously liked the sound of the upright. I actually use the upright studio bass instrument a lot in my tracks, and I maybe need to stray away from using it so much, but it's interesting. So all these instruments here have the same chords. It's the chords from the guitar chord progression that I wrote. I just put them in MIDI, but they're all the same chords, and so I just literally copied and pasted them into each instrument. And I even did that for the upright bass, as you can see. Now the reason why it obviously doesn't come out as a chord is because I also have a arpeggiator MIDI effect on there that I designed, and so it's got like that eighth note kind of feel to it, that you would hear in like a traditional jazz track. So I was really happy with how that came out. I like how these two things sound together. Hopefully you guys have nice speakers or headphones or whatever plugged in so that you can kind of hear what each thing is doing specifically. So that's that. Oh yeah, I've got that super long release on that bass too. So from there, we've got the drums. I've got them grouped differently because I have everything that isn't sidechained to the kick in this group. So I guess I'll go over that too. I've got pretty much everything sidechained to the kick, just because that's kind of like the lo-fi thing to do, as stupid as that is. But I really do like the sound that you get from it, especially when it's like that like lower release or slower release, and it just is kind of cool, especially when most of the things drop out when the kick hits. I think it's a pretty cool and interesting sound. So all the drums that aren't being sidechained to the kick are right here. It's got some really interesting and weird rhythms going on, and there's also just some weird sound effects that I used from some of the Logic instruments and stuff. But I've got the rain, obviously, that's called Late Night, so you can imagine walking late at night downtown with fog and it's dark and you're just kind of vibing, whatever. So I added that. And then I really like the ride too that I put. It's got that like swing, like sound to it, especially going along with like the bass, the whatevers. So I like that. And I wanted everything like this stuff to drop out when the kick hit, so that's why I sidechained all of this to the kick. So I did that, and I've got your vinyl crackle sounds. I've got like 3 different tracks of it going on. And yeah, the other thing is I've got some like of these weird like fast trap hats that I put in. At least like the rhythm of them is kind of like that, but the sound is really like more lo-fi. So I always like doing stuff like that, doing weird things and experimenting with them. So otherwise, I think that's pretty much it. I think the last thing I'll go over now is just my producer tag that I've been using for a long time. So behind all these effects is me and Timo saying Flendrix. And there's even more effects on that. That's just like an audio file that I ripped from Calm Down. Actually, that was the first time that I used that. But the story behind that is kind of interesting. Timo and I were in the studio working on What Do We Call It, Bro? That song we just took us forever to finally finish, but I remember freestyling or something when we were hanging out in the studio, and I'm terrible at freestyle rapping, and so I rhymed something with Flendrix, and then Timo gets on the mic and does his bars, and he also uses the word Flendrix, and it was a pretty funny thing. But what I did was I just grabbed the clips of each of us saying it, and I panned them and put a bunch of effects on them and put it on Calm Down, and that kind of just became my producer tag, and so I kind of just stuck with it. I like how it sounded, especially with some of the robotic like delay from the ring shifter plugin that I used, and I've actually since this I've redesigned it with some Serum Effects plugins actually, and I think I like it a lot better. But that's pretty much it. So Late Night is just the track where I had a guitar progression and I liked it. It was jazzy, and so from there you get kind of this more electronic age jazz piece that's also kind of lo-fi or whatever you want to call it, but it's an interesting track, and it's still to this day one of my favorite ones that I've done. So I just remember sitting in the basement. So Tyler and Timo, they actually used to live together at a house that I pretty much also lived at. I was there all the time, and they had built the studio in the basement, and so you better believe I was there a ton of the time, producing, writing songs, making music for hours, and this is before I even had a job. So I spent a lot of time down there, and I just remember being up at 4 o'clock in the morning like working on this, and the creative juices are flowing, and I'm finally putting one of my favorite progressions that I've written into a song, and the vibe is just really cool, and so that's why I kind of decided to name it Late Night. So that's the track, and I hope that this video isn't going to be too terribly long, but hopefully I can edit it down a little bit. I'm looking at the time and it looks like it's going to be a little bit long. So thank you guys for sticking with me. Thank you for watching, and if anybody's interested in anything else, then leave a comment so that in the future videos I can hopefully go over some other things that you guys might be wondering about. So otherwise, all I can say is thank you for tuning in, and we'll catch you guys on the flip side. So peace out.